can take, chats about everything from fad diets to whether or not you should be incorporating CBD into your everyday life. Just a lot of things going on. Sustainable lifestyle. So make plans to join us. Refresh.
For the Facebook Live?
Yeah. Refresh that. Yeah, refresh that, and then it should pop up. At the top there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been refreshing it, so.
Yeah, because I think it should be up there. There we are. Yeah, there we
Just
are.
a little slow.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Awesome. Okay. We have already got a few people logged on. Good morning. Well, we can go before we start with the questions. Why don't you kind of introduce yourself and let everybody who is tuned in, you know, they've been watching you all week on News 4 Today, but who is Deborah Owens?
And they're like, who is this woman? Well, I'm Deborah Owens. I'm founder and CEO of Wealthy You, and I'm an author. I've written 4 books.
Yeah.
A Purse of Your Own, Nickel and Dime Your Way to Wealth, Confident Investing, Every Woman's Money. And really, I'm so excited and I'm so grateful because one of the reasons that I founded Wealthy You was that I always, as I went out speaking and doing conferences, it was clear that people really didn't have a good sense of how to invest. I mean, think about it. Our parents didn't have to worry about where to invest their money. They had pensions, and when they retired, they could, you know, pretty much count on a check for the rest of their lives.
Right.
Whereas now, we all have 401ks, 457s, and we are responsible for our finances. And I started Wealthy You really because I felt like people needed accountability and support.
Yeah.
And so from go through our courses, we have them electronically. We have all day master classes. In fact, we have one coming up tomorrow at the National Harbor near here. Now it's a deep dive, it's a master class, but the whole goal of Wealthy You is to close the wealth gap, specifically for women and people of color, because oftentimes they never had anyone in their family to teach them these lessons around how to invest. And so we have a lot of fun. And the other thing that was exciting was that you actually interviewed one of our Wealthy You members, and Dia. Yeah, and she was, it's interesting how sometimes you don't feel like you have a lot of knowledge or confidence, but as she shared, and I was so grateful that she shared her journey, as she shared, so she's investing in her 529 for her children, she's managing her 401k, and that's what Wealthy You is about. So I'm on a mission to eradicate the wealth gap, which is a huge mission, but I'm having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and you know, something Dia pointed out was, okay, yes. Oh, can you answer that?
Yep.
Sorry, it looks like it's a station. Something Dia had pointed out was, you know, she grew up and people weren't talking about money.
Exactly.
In her family, those around her weren't talking about money. And I feel like a lot of people, unless maybe you come from a family that somebody works in finance or really knows what they're talking about, we don't talk about money. Maybe we talk about you get an allowance when you're a child, or you go to school and somebody might tell you don't open up too many credit cards when you get to college. But other than that, you know, we don't really talk about money a lot in school anymore. And so then you become 18, you become an adult. And Dia told me herself, when she first went away to college, she kind of got herself in some trouble opening up those accounts and spending more than she should have. So why do you think it's important to talk about money and not make it this taboo thing?
Well, it's important to talk about money. You know, I wrote something today on my blog and in my newsletter, and it today I was really reflecting on the fact that over 20 years ago, I just happened to, on a dare, end up and apply for a job at Merrill Lynch.
Yeah.
And when I got into this big investment company, I was like floored because I wondered, how come no one told me about this? How come my family didn't know about it? And so here we are more than 20 years later, and I'm, Wealthy You, we're on Channel 4 sharing, because you're absolutely right. We're not, if your parents didn't invest, because typically that's how you learn is that someone, your parents invest, they sit you down, because money is very personal, right?
It is.
But if your parents were kind of old school, where they did have pensions, so they didn't have to worry about investing and managing their retirement funds, where would you learn? Now, here's the interesting thing. I have an MBA, and my MBA is concentrated in finance, but I was really shocked that there was no content around investing, because I was like, man, I can't wait to get to the investing portion because I'm going to ace this class. And it was like, okay, managerial accounting. And really what we're seeing is a movement even in grade school to start integrating financial literacy into everyday coursework, because that's into curriculum, because that's what needs to happen.
Absolutely. I know we heard from a local teacher, somebody reached out and was like, I know you're doing the Facebook Live, but I want to get Deborah to come speak to my high school students, I believe in maybe Montgomery County or something, because it is so important. Brittany,
any questions so far?
We had some before. I think I have them saved in my phone from earlier today. Let me grab that from our producer, Brittany, who's working things behind the scenes. Brittany, thank you so much. So first,
well, I got a question actually. So
you did? Okay, perfect.
So one of the questions that someone asked was, does it make sense to take Social Security as soon as you can, or should you wait until you're the full age of retirement?
Okay.
And the point I want for folks to understand, that you figure, oh my goodness, I can get my Social Security check at 62. It's going to be a lot less, and full retirement age right now is 67 years old.
Wow.
And so you could end up getting almost 25% less than if you had waited to that age.
Okay.
And so I really want to encourage folks to, if you can manage it, to wait till your full retirement age to receive it, because there's some other stipulations as well. If you start taking that check and then you earn other income and you're still working, your retirement benefits could be impacted as well. So that's my question. My answer really is, wait for as long as you can, because you will receive more, and we're living so much longer. So we want to make sure that we can get as big of a Social Security check as possible.
So one question we got in, and of course, as soon as my phone went blank here. Okay, here we go. So it was, I would like to open a traditional IRA with a direct rollover from a 401k. Is there a bank or a way you recommend to do that? This viewer, was thinking Navy or NASA credit union. So I guess this is somebody who works maybe for the government. Or so how would they go about opening an IRA, rolling that over from their 401k through work?
Yes, so great question, because the fact is that we're changing jobs much more frequently. And so for many of us, we've accumulated those retirement assets in other 401ks with former employers. And so now what you want to do is open up what is called a rollover IRA. So a rollover IRA kind of identifies with the government that those assets came from a prior retirement plan.
Okay.
So to that end, the other question he asked was, should I invest in a credit union or a bank? Now, typically, if it is retirement assets and you're not retiring soon, what I really suggest to people, any funds that you're going to need within 5 years really shouldn't be in any kind of stock market or mutual funds. But I believe in their case that it probably makes sense for them to kind of research, if it is their Navy Federal Credit Union. Many of those institutions allow you to invest those rollovers, not just in CDs, but sometimes they have financial advisors there who can then allow you to invest in mutual funds. So one of the easiest way to really begin investing is something as simple as an index fund, a 500 index fund, and that's basically invested in 500 of the largest companies. It kind of goes up and down with the market. And the truth is, very few mutual funds, other managed mutual funds, outperform those averages. And so I think an index fund would be a great place for them to start and to talk to someone about.
Okay, all right, index funds. Thank you for that answer. Another question we have, somebody, Ada, who, she's in her mid-30s, new mom, kind of young, but thinking forward. She just said, what are the first steps she should be taking? Where do I go to invest my money? And what's a realistic amount of time to wait for a return on that money?
Those are all great questions. And so to that end, what I would say to her, goodness, if someone could turn that phone off as well. What I would say to her is start.
Okay.
And if you'll remember, we did a segment and we talked about the fact that women need to make investing a priority, specifically for young moms who are often in and out of the workforce. It's just important that you continue to invest. So if you can, we did the segment on how you can find the money to invest.
Right.
So let's say you did that segment, the trade off in terms of behavior, weighted wealth. If you can find an extra $50 or $100, start investing that. Mm-hmm. And I would say for a young mom, one of the things I would encourage her to do, if she's not working, she gets an opportunity to open up what's called a spousal IRA, even though she doesn't have income. And it allows you to put, I think the contribution maximum right now is at $6,500. But people see that $6,500 and they're like, oh my goodness, that's $500 a month. We don't have that in our budget. Well, even if you have, that's the maximum. Even if you started with $100 a month, that's $1,100 a year. And if you do that consistently, that's a great way to start investing. Also in the segment, so I know all of your segments are on the Facebook page, on the NBC Facebook page. One of the other segments that we talked about was starting with apps, right? So one of those apps, if I'm not mistaken, it's Robinhood. They allow you to invest in ETFs. And so all ETFs are exchange traded mutual funds. So it's like a mutual fund, but it trades like a stock. That might be a great way for her to start investing in small amounts. And over time, that can really add up.
Yeah. Speaking of investing in the apps, because we got a lot of interest from that story, let me pull up, because one of our viewers actually reached out to me today on Facebook, and this is, Joe Williams Delaney. She says she saw our story. She started Acorn this week. What do we need to know if we downloaded one of these apps in terms of getting the best use out of it?
That's fantastic. So great question, Jummy. The wonderful things about these apps, Acorn, Robinhood, and Stash, they all have Facebook pages where other investors who are using the app are sharing their experience.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, so you can get some really great ideas, and the websites themselves have all types of tools that they can have access to that'll teach them how to invest. But the reason I love Acorns is because it's going to automatically round that money. And so it kind of develops the habit of investing or saving without it being something that you have to do. I also want to tell folks that join our Wealthy You community on Facebook, because that's one of the things that we do are webinars. You'll hear from other people in the community. They'll share their experiences, and then you can take that insight and learn how to, get your feet wet, use some of these apps, and start investing. I just want to encourage you, it's not hard, and you don't need a lot of money.
Yeah. Something that...
We have some questions here.
Oh, hi. Okay.
So Linda West from Odenton is asking, is 61 too late to start investing?
Okay, is 61 too late?
It's never too late. Man, we have some great stories about people in Wealthy You who were thought they couldn't afford to retire. And what I want to say to Linda, it's never too late. One of the things I'm going to suggest is a hack, and that is to begin to think about how you can get to that maximum contribution in your retirement account. So a lot of times people say, oh, well, I'm putting in 5% or whatever my employer will match. And you feel like I can't afford to. So the hack is every 6 months, just increase your contribution by 1% and you'll be amazed at how you get to 10%. In fact, we have one of our members who it took her 5 years, but she started investing the maximum because if you're over 50, you can invest. I think the maximum if you're under 50 is 19.5, but if you're over 50, it's like $25,000 or $26,000. Sounds like a lot of money, but she was able to do that. And because the market has performed so well over the past 10 years, she literally doubled the amount that was in her retirement account.
Wow.
And now she's retired. So Linda, it's never too late, but get started today.
Okay, great.
Jimmy, I can go ahead and continue this. They need you downstairs real quick.
They do. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll be right back. Brittany, our producer behind the scenes, is going to keep asking questions. I'll be right back.
Excellent.
So let's see, Marine Waxwell, I'm sorry. Let's see. Where are you from? From Fairfax. She's asking leasing versus buying a vehicle.
That's always a question. You know, I have a great story. One of my first cars I leased. And when that lease was up, I didn't realize that, first of all, I didn't have anything that I could trade in. So I was kind of starting from the word go. The other thing that I didn't know was that when you lease, you have to make sure that you stay within a certain mileage limit and that you take care of that car. So oftentimes why leasing seems attractive is because you can get a fairly high-end car and pay a lot less than if you purchased it. So the only thing I'm going to say, and these are my opinions and no one else's, but what I think you get the best bang for your buck is to buy a car that is maybe a few years old. Maybe it came off of a lease even, but it has really low mileage and it's certified. And typically that will be your best investment because all of the depreciation that happens in the first couple of years of a car, you can be my suggestion for her.
Okay. What would you tell people with all this holiday debt? What's the best practice to go forward paying down that debt?
The best practice for holiday debt. The first thing I tell people to do is to write it all down. Because it's sort of like in your head and you think like it's a lot. And then you want to have a strategy. So you can take it two ways, and they call it the waterfall strategy. You could either identify your debt that has the largest interest rate and focus on that because that's compounding and, kind of accruing more interest faster. Or one of the other ways to look at it is take it from your lowest balances, pay those balances, pay the minimums every month on all of them, of course, but then take those smaller balances, get rid of them, and as you get rid of those smaller balances, then you'll put that new money into the next debt.
A lot of time paying down debt, experts will tell you to come up with a cushion. How big should your cushion be?
When you say paying down debt and you need a cushion, so I'm going to assume that by cushion they mean a cash reserve, right? And so the key is that oftentimes we feel like, oh, it's so overwhelming. How can I have a cash reserve of some kind if I have debt and I want to save? And so the way to look at it is just to have different buckets. So you need to save because you need to have that cushion. And if you don't, what happens is you take out the credit card. So it's kind of like a domino effect. So what you're going to do is you're going to put a little in each of those pots, right? So you're going to put money in savings. You're going to have a plan for paying off your debt using that waterfall. But you also want to make sure that you're contributing into whatever retirement plans that you have through employers. And if you don't have one, that you establish some kind of IRA for a long-term retirement plan. And just look at those three baskets and make sure that you're putting money into each of those every month. And that's really how you get ahead. But cut up the credit card so you don't spend more.
Yeah. If you had to get a credit card, what sort of things should you look for?
So if you had to get a credit card, what sort of things that you look for? I really suggest that people really look at their credit unions, because typically credit unions are nonprofit, and you'll find that oftentimes they're running all kinds of promotions. Sometimes it could be loan consolidation, but for a credit card, typically their interest rates can be lower than if you go to a traditional bank. So start a relationship with a credit union. You don't necessarily, a lot of times you'll say, oh, well, it's only for this type of employee. But typically, if you live within in the demographic area of that credit union, you'll still qualify to be able to join it. Got some more questions?
Yeah,
Excellent.
Terry Owens is asking us about accountability partners and how can that help with investing?
Well, are helpful because sometimes when we start something new, we feel like we hit a bump, the market goes down, and then we get afraid. An accountability partner, what it can do is to help us stay on track. And the other thing is really wonderful to have someone who's like-minded with you so that you can both hold each other accountable. So that's why it's really good.
Okay. And for those of us who don't know what that is, what is an accountability partner?
Accountability partner is just like if you're going to the gym, right? And you know how if you're going to the gym and you said, okay, me and my friend, we're gonna make a pact, we're gonna go every 3 days, 3 days a week. Well, you're more likely to make that gym date if you have an accountability partner and you know that they're gonna be at that gym waiting on you. The same thing holds true with an accountability partner as it relates to your finances, is that person then can help you stay on track when you get discouraged or feel like, oh, I can't afford to do this anymore. So it's really accountability partner helps you to be accountable to your finances.
Welcome back. I'm sorry, I had to, the news business, I had to run downstairs.
Okay.
Did we already ask about student loans and how to reduce them?
Asked about, no, we did not.
Okay, student loans, sometimes maybe we don't have that assistance from our family, and so we take out loans to finance our education, or maybe you get an advanced degree, an MBA, you want to go to law school or whatever it is, and so you've got this mountain of student loan debt. What is, in your opinion, the best way to try to lower that as quickly as possible so we're not kind of mounted with it?
Well, it's interesting. It depends, right? Everybody's situation is different. However, one of the things I would say is that typically if you have a Stafford loan, a loan from the government, those are typically lower interest rates. And in some cases, you have different ways that you can consolidate those under the government, different plans. And if you go into the private sector, you'll give up that. So make sure that you really taking a look at who holds your loans so that you don't make a decision that in the long run might impact you negatively. The other thing I would say for people who have a lot of debt, and some people have gone on to get graduate degrees, and they could have upwards of $100,000 of debt. I want to really encourage folks, if you are in the public sector, to see if you qualify for loan forgiveness. So what loan forgiveness is typically what you'll do is you'll pay based on your income, and then after 10 years, the rest of those loans will be forgiven. However, you must apply and you must be accepted. So what I have found is there are a lot of people working in the public sector. They've heard all kinds of nightmares about, oh, someone applied for that, they didn't get it. Doesn't matter. Apply, reapply, and do it as soon as you can, because you figure $100,000 in loans, accruing over 10 years, that could end up being another $130,000, $140,000. That's almost $14,000 a year. So I guess the point that I'm making, really be strategic about how you're approaching your student loan debt, and make sure that you're making choices that really are going to benefit you in the long run.
Yeah. One question that we had received, if you have some extra money, is it better to invest that or just save it?
Good question. It depends.
It always depends.
It does, because, I don't want people to think that, here's always my fear. The stock market's up, everybody feels like, oh, they're a stock market wizard. Then they start investing money. So here's a rule of thumb. Any money that you're going to need within the next 5 years should not be in the stock market, right? If it's more than 5 years, then you could begin to think about investing. If it's under $10,000, more than likely a mutual fund is going to be the best way to invest. So that could be either an exchange traded fund or a mutual fund. And then you have a professional money manager. I still suggest you do index funds because they have low expenses. You don't really have a professional money manager. They're just investing in whatever stocks are in that index. Yeah. But it's a great way for you to start investing, $25, $30, $50 a month. In fact, I have a book, and one of my books is Nickels and Dime Your Way to Wealth. And it's a true story about a parking attendant who never made more than $12 an hour. And by nickel and diming, just what I just described, little amounts in different mutual funds over time, he was able to accumulate $500,000, and that was over 10 years ago. And so now what you have is that his funds are probably $1 million. And so what I want our viewers to understand is dream big but act small. And little amounts over time really, really add up. We've seen it in the Wealthy You community. One of our members, she had worked for 30 years. Talk about, is it too late? Before she started investing. And in fact, if they go to my website, to DeborahOwens.com, they can actually see her story. Okay. And she starts with how I started with zero. In 2 years, she had accumulated $70,000 in a retirement plan. Now, mind you, again, she started investing. She stopped doing all of the other things, the shopping, and you'll hear their stories and their rewards, and they'll say, well, the things had to go away. I had to sacrifice. I couldn't just go out with the girls and do that sort of thing. It's never too late. And, one of the things I said when you interviewed me was that, back in the day, you had to have $10,000 to get into a mutual fund. Now you can invest with as little as $10. So get started. That's all I want to say. I want to really encourage anyone listening to us today to get started.
Yeah, and so of all the people you've worked with through, Wealthy You and all your programs that you've come into contact with, the ones who are able to make those big turnarounds, that in 5 years you have $500,000 or,
Well, no, not 5 years you have $500,000. Don't get me wrong. So I want you to know that with Mr. Earl, it took him over 20 years to do 20 years, okay. Right? Over 20 years to do that. The woman who couldn't retire, so, think about it. I'm getting ready to retire. Maybe I have $250,000, right? I know that's not enough, that's going to, but imagine if you just stuck with it, right? You started contributing. She could contribute up to $24,000. So if they go to my website, they'll see her story too, Sylvia. And she talks about, well, I had a 403B. I knew I should do that, but I didn't realize I had a 401k that I could invest in too, because she's in the public sector. She was a nurse. So was she making a lot of money? No, a lot of people in this area make $120,000 a year. So what it's going to take is you limiting your lifestyle, right? And then making a commitment to invest in your future. So I want to create a realistic picture, right? So this happened over time, right? So I went from putting, $10,000 a year away from my retirement. Now I'm doing $30,000, right? So in 5 years, I put in $150,000. So I had $250, I got $150,000. That money grew. Now I have several $100,000. That's how it works. One of the things we do at Wealthy You is we really encourage you to get to your first 5 figures. right? So it might be, you can see a story on our website about charity. Young woman wasn't making a lot of money. She went from $0 to $10,000 in a year, right? Mm-hmm. She was like, oh, okay, this is how it works.
Yeah.
Now she's on her way to her first 6 figures, right? We have people who've had 6 figures and now they're at 7 figures, right? So it doesn't seem like, it doesn't seem possible, but here's what I want folks to know. You can't save your way to wealth. You must invest. But for so many people, it really is just a function of optimizing right here where I'm at. I'm with my employer. They give me these options. I can do X. I'm self-employed. Okay, I better open up an SEP IRA. And at least when I get paid something from a client, I put something away from my future. But I think the real issue is, Jummy, that when you're not taught this, then you're really fearful.
Yeah.
And then, it seems, and here's the other thing, the market is gonna go down. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen the market, I'm dating myself, the stock market crash of 1989. I was very young. I had just started in the investment industry. 92, we had a recession. The tech boom, 2000, Y2K, tech stocks went down. The recession, everybody's still talking about 2008. I lost all my money. Well, guess what? You wouldn't have lost anything if you hadn't sold it. So the way that you mitigate that fear, that's really why I started Wealthy You, is that you learn how to research and analyze stocks, how to research and analyze mutual fund, how to do proper asset allocation. And when you learn how to do it, then guess what? The fear goes away. And in fact, some of the people in Wealthy You are more aggressive than I am. I'm Goldilocks, not too high, not too low, just right.
Just right. Yeah.
That's right.
Terry Owens is asking, when should you start educating kids about money?
Start educating kids about money as soon as you give them that first allowance. So what I say to parents is, and it's for everybody's culture, it's different. But, to save, right? Let them spend something. I mean, the way what we did with our children who are adults now in their own right was they could spend and half went into a mutual fund, right? And so when they got to college, those mutual fund assets were what we used to mitigate some of the expenses. And if I had to do over again, just being real transparent, I would allow them to be more engaged and, actually look at those mutual fund statements when they came in and keep them growing. So the time for them to start is as soon as you give them that first little allowance.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Real quick, can you give for each kind of age group, like one piece of advice?
Okay.
So like if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60 plus.
Great question. So if you're in your 20s and you've come out of college, you may be feeling like, I don't even know where to start, right? So all I want you to do is to develop the habit of saving, right? So just make a commitment to save 10% of whatever you earn. A lot of people have side hustles now, right? But they're just spending that money. So pay yourself first. That's all I want you to do in your 20s. In your 30s, really make sure that you're contributing to your employer-sponsored retirement plan. A lot of times we feel like, oh my gosh, I'm young, I've got plenty of time. You'll be surprised at how quickly that will go.
Yes.
So, typically by the time you're 30, you should have saved 1 times your annual income, right? So if you're 30 and you're making $100,000, you should have $100,000 in the bank, right?
Okay.
But in truth, you didn't always make $100,000. So let's average that out. So you should be anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 in your employer-sponsored plan.
Okay.
In your 40s, it is real critical. Typically, you're going to have children, and they're going to have, you're going to be preparing them for college. But I really got to say these to parents. If it's between funding that college education and your retirement, you have to choose retirement, right? Especially if they're about to go to college, right? And so to that end, you can't. So what I want parents to know is that as soon as you have that child, you go open up a 529 plan and you start putting money in it. And at birthdays and holidays, you also, rather than people giving you gifts, say, hey, you know what, write a check to their fund. Invest that money. So set up something so that you have funds available. In your 50s, man, it's time to get serious, right? And at 50, you know, you may not have had those discretionary dollars to do and to put away in your retirement plan when you were younger, but now you're 50. Mm-hmm. So you get a real benefit, and that is that anybody over 50 can put more than people under. So it's almost $6,500 more. So you're probably saying, is she crazy? I can't put that much money in. So what I'm going to really encourage you to do is graduate it over time. Go from 10% to 12% to 30%. Every year, increase the amount you're contributing in there. And when you get a raise, bump it up, right? Because you weren't living off that money anyway. And now you can put that in your future. In your 60s, what I'm going to tell you, it's never too late. Because people are working a lot longer. Retirement age is, full retirement age is 67, but most people are working on to 70. Although, let me be frank, there's ageism. We see it in the wealthy you community. The older you get, the tougher it is to find those opportunities. Mm-hmm. Still, don't be discouraged. Think about different ways. What we're seeing is the most successful entrepreneurs are over 50. Mm-hmm. They started businesses. And so what I want to say to those who are, at 60, that is still a possibility. I think it was Colonel Sanders started Kentucky Fried Chicken when he was 65 years old. So if he can do it, you can do it too. Yeah. So here's the point though, Julie. We're in a very dynamic economy right now. That's really why I started Wealthy You. People get frustrated. They feel like, why is it so hard? Why can't it be like my parents? And I just have one job, that I'm going to have a pension. Well, it's not that anymore. I just read something that said, man, like 40% of people are freelancers or self-employed. That's a big number, and it's only going to grow. So with that in mind, you've got to make sure that you're creating an infrastructure for your personal finances through which you can take care of yourself and you can experience wealth and real wealth. Yeah. And that's why I started Wealthy You, is when your money works so you don't have to. So that's what we aspire to, right?
I've been doing these stories all week, and it still like makes me nervous.
Yeah.
For sure.
Totally. Any other questions?
Yes. Stephen Hawkins. I don't know where he's from. He says, I'm researching and looking into S&P 500 index funds. I was wondering if it's too risky or volatility.
That is the best place to start, right? So if we were to look at the hierarchy of risk in mutual funds specifically and investments, and S&P 500 is on the lower end of that risk. Now, mind you, these are stocks, and the stock market goes up and down, and the stocks are just stocks of companies who, they have great times, they don't have so great times, but if you think about it, the largest companies are large because they've been doing it consistently. So I would say to Stephen, that's a great place to start.
Stephanie, sorry.
I'm sorry.
I would say
to Stephanie that that's a great place to start. And the benefit to index funds is that they have low fees. There are many companies offer them. You don't have before you used to have to pay a sales charge to get into many things, and there's some great companies out there with index funds, whether it be Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. Vanguard, pretty much, John Bogle invented the index fund. So they're the best. They're the company that's known for them. But all companies provide you with those kind of funds now.
Stephanie, you're doing better than me because I don't even know what that is.
That's gonna change.
I'm like,
that's
a
gonna
what?
change.
A
Yeah.
what are you talking
So,
about?
we talked about it. In fact, you know what? I have my books. If Brittany can get my books, I just want to show them the book.
Oh, yeah,
Nickel,
yeah.
and if you can get it out of my purse, I meant to pick it up. It's right on top of there. It's right on top. There's
Okay.
a purple book and a white book. So anyhow, since we're online, I wrote this book, Nickel and Dime Your Way to Wealth, because you can sit down and you can read this book in an hour, right? And it is the story of that parking attendant. And so what it's going to do is give you a basic foundation and how the markets work. Now, the interesting thing about this parking attendant is he was labeled a slow learner. He didn't graduate from high school until he was 21, but he stuck with it. He went to night school. He was a parking attendant, and he was at a bank. And so there were a lot of wealthy people that banked there. So he was listening, and he got up the courage to invest his first $200. So if Mr. Earl can do it, you can too. And the other book is my book, A Purse of Your Own. Mm-hmm. And this is near and dear to my heart because a lot of people don't know my story, but in the first chapter of the book, what I ask and what all of the people in our community do is they write their money story. Mm-hmm. And that is where you got all of those attitudes, beliefs, and fears around money. Some of them have no basis in reality, but the studies show that we basically develop our beliefs around money by the time we're 7 or 8 years old. So I wrote this book because I wrote my money story. And my money story, or purse story as I'm calling it in here, was that my parents separated after 33 years of marriage. And I was a young woman, 18 years old. And you can imagine what that feeling of economic security and my mom and seeing her life change. And so I said to myself, I would always have a purse of my own. And so that's why I wrote the book, A Purse of Your Own. Mm. And in this book, though, as I went on in my career, as you can imagine, a young financial advisor, many of my clients were women. And so the question I wanted to answer in this book, Jummy, was, what do financially successful women do and know that most women don't? Mm. And what I found, and in the beginning of each chapter, there's a story of a woman who demonstrates one of the habits, these 7 wealthy habits, is sort of the wealthy you system. And what I found is that financially successful women, wealthy women, do almost the opposite of what they're told. Because as I shared in one of the segments, society tells us that we should kind of take care of everybody else and eventually we'll get to us. Well, that is a very dangerous approach to take, because there are 2 things you need to be financially successful. The first thing is time, right? So, and everyone
says they don't have time.
Yeah, and then so you need time for that money to grow, right? So if you wait, you're literally, the difference between you starting at 20, putting, let's just say $100 away or $1,100 away at 20 versus 30 is almost double the amount of money, right? And so what people don't understand is it's the cost of waiting. And so I don't want women to wait. That's one of the reasons that, I've kind of been on this path. I started Wealthy You, and, and we said a little earlier, hey, I want to invite folks to go to my website. They can go to wealthyu.com or DeborahOwens.com, spelled WealthyU, WEALTHY, the letter U, right? Mm-hmm. Or just my name, DeborahOwens.com. And on there, they can get, tools. They can sign up for our newsletter. They can join our Wealthy You community. And that is the whole point. You said earlier, is that we don't talk about this topic. Yeah. And so as a result, nobody knows what to do. So, the community is about making it cool to, build wealth like a boss. Why not?
Boss. Invest like a boss.
That's right. This is so much fun.
I know. Well, before we kind of wrap up, okay. 2020, January, new year, I feel like 2020 is that rounded number, and so everyone's kind of thinking different. What's your biggest piece of advice, something that we can all do in 2020?
I love 2020 because 2020 means perfect vision.
Oh.
And so what I really want people to do, we did an exercise this week. And that exercise, or they were able to see one of our Wealthy You members' vision board and mine. And what I want you to do is get clarity, right? So it is 2020, but I want you to think like it's 2030. That's going to give you 10 years. So it's 10 years from now, what happened? And so where do you see yourself? Then I want you to create the best picture you can of yourself 10 years from now. Then I want you to walk back, right? So what do I need to do today to get to that vision that I see myself in the future? It could be that you want to pay off debt. So let's write down all the debt. In 10 years, how do we pay all that off? It could be that you want to lose 20 pounds. You know, what is it going to take to get you there, right? It could be that you are thinking about retiring in 10 years. Create that perfect outcome. What do you need to do today to get there? And then I want everybody to set up an account for every one of those goals and start putting, doesn't have to be a lot, it can be $50, $100 into it, and they'll be amazed at what happened. I'm certainly just so excited about the progress that we've seen in Wealthy You. You know, you have this vision, right? And you in fact, it was a vision that my son helped me create. And, you know, I was out here, I was writing all these books, and he was like, "Mom, you can write all the books you want, but people, they need accountability and support." And so that's why it kind of was the genesis of starting Wealthy You. And every day, there's nothing I like more than getting a text, as I did last week, and one of our members say, "I don't believe it. I just made it into that 7-figure. I'm one of those people with 7 figures." And I'm like, well, no, you're not one of those people. You're you. And, you know, so you can't even wrap your brain around it because you never thought it was possible. What I want to tell people, it is possible. It's not hard, but it's not easy.
Deborah, thank you so much for coming in. We truly appreciate it. So once again, DeborahOwens.com. And Deborah has an H on the end.
Yes.
You know,
that's
so
right.
Just
biblical spelling.
Yes, just so you know that. And then wealthyu.com. And then one more time before we go, tell us you have an event this weekend.
I do. So we have a master class going on, and it's all day. It's from 10 to 4 p.m. Registration starts at 9. And in it, they're going to get a deep dive into the Wealthy You curriculum, those 7 wealthy habits. We actually do an exercise that shows you how to build a 7-figure portfolio. They're going to hear from those actual women it is a panel of all women who've been through Wealthy You, and they're going to share, just like Dia shared her financial journey, they'll be sharing their financial journey as well. And so they'll come away, talk about, and they'll have that 2020 blueprint. And now it's just about really executing and engaging and making it happen. So thanks so much for having me on Jummy all week. It's like been such a dream for me, and more importantly, seeing our Wealthy You community and our members highlighted has just been, fantastic.
Thank you. We really appreciate you giving us all your wealth and knowledge. And thank you everybody for tuning in. Have a great weekend. A big thank you to Brittany, our producer behind the screen scenes, kind of holding it down. And I'll see you Monday morning on News 4.